All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our webcast today. The topic of our webinar is going to be the ultimate ingredients for total gun coverage, being hosted by a combination three partners: Scylla, the Active Shooter Prevention Project, and EAGL, Response and Integration. So as part of the podcast today, we have Glenn Norling, who is the director of the Active Shooter Prevention Project. We have Scott Seidler with EAGL, and myself, Kris Greiner, VP of Sales for Skyla. So with that, I will turn it over to Glenn to start us off.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Glenn Norling, and I'm the Executive Director for the Active Shooter Prevention Project. So on behalf of Kris Greiner and the rest of our community of experts, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar with EAGL and Scylla. Our mission at the Active Shooter Prevention Project is to establish a national standard for the public's response to the continuing threat of active shooters. This not only requires an innovative and collaborative approach, but it also means that we must focus on prevention first and then response. Slide, please. And next slide, please. It has now been 25 years since the attack at Columbine High School in Colorado. So why have we not yet established a national standard for the public in these 25 years? The answer is because we have not yet imagined how to create a preventative environment. We have been too focused on reaction and response when prevention is the true key. Consider the fact that we have not lost a child in a fire in a school in almost 70 years, and the comprehensive nature of what has enabled us to get to this point. An approach that includes proactive education and prevention activities, youth awareness campaigns, construction requirements, building codes, along with response improvements. This is where we need to focus our efforts, or we remain relegated to repeating history's painful lessons. Years of statistics tell us that the average active shooter event lasts from 0 to 8 minutes. This 8 minutes is time that we cannot afford to throw away. We are focused on what we call the gift of time. Police response time to average active shooter incidents varies dramatically. The average time for a substantial police response is roughly 8 minutes. Statistics also tell us that for police, if they arrive within those 8 minutes, there is a 75% or greater chance that they will immediately be engaged in a gunfight. Studies compiled by the United States Secret Service show that it takes the average person 1 minute to call the police in an emergency. Digging a little deeper into that number, we see that it takes the average person 4 minutes to recognize and realize that they need to call the police. Add these two together, and the reality is that it takes 5 minutes to call the police. Now, we have to consider just what information the police get at that 5-minute point. Imagine yourself here. Hello, police? I'm on the 23rd floor of the bank building downtown. I think the address is on 3rd Street. Someone is shooting. Help. The police are coming, but it is up to you to take action to save your life because they will not be there in time. So what can we do to give you the gift of time? In this webinar, we will focus on the technology that can detect the presence of weapons where they should not be, as well as the technology that provides detailed critical response information to the public and police alike. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Scott Seidler from EAGL Technology. Scott?
Thank you, Glenn. At EAGL Technology, we're actually taking this idea of the gift of time to a whole new level. We've created a platform, and we've had this platform for some time. We're actually really well known for gunshot detection, and that's a big piece of what we do. But the platform we've created is there for automatic emergency response. What we do is automate an emergency response. We don't rely on people to do what they need to do. They do it anyway, that's fine. What we're trying to do is give you that gift of time back, that 5 minutes. We're trying to eliminate that altogether. Our system is fully automated. It takes an input from many different sources, including, as you'll see, Skyla's AI, plus our own indoor, outdoor, and body-worn gunshot detection sensors, pull stations, panic buttons, apps on phones, connections to phone systems and other systems as well that snap into us. And we then go and automate that entire thing. That's our job. We do this through an automated response or adaptive response page. This is a web page within our system. We are a web-based product that allows us to do all these things, tie in all different kinds of inputs and outputs and things like that, and tie them together. Gives us the ability to launch drones automatically and to do the things that are needed, like call you on the phone, reach out via E911 to law enforcement, do mass notification, emails, texts, send out satellite images with dots on the map, live alarms, give you access to the tools and things that you can do things on site, like cameras, door access, automatically lock down doors and do things like that, using all the inputs that are at our all the inputs that we have to allow us to do those things, to trigger those things off. And we can do this on an input by input basis, meaning our adaptive response, which is simply a web page within our system, allows you to pick and choose what happens if a specific input goes active. Somebody pulls into a parking lot with a car and we're doing AI-based license plate recognition, and that license plate is a problem for us, we can create a specific adaptive response that locks doors down, lets security know what's going on, and tells people what needs to happen, right? We're taking steps to slow down the bad stuff. Our job is to deliver all the information everybody needs it as quickly as possible, and then provide tools and capabilities to slow down the bad things that are happening and then allow people to see what's going on in real time. So we're going to give them access to things like cameras, floor maps of the buildings and things like that right off the bat. If the situation changes, maybe that person now gets out of the vehicle with a weapon and we're doing AI-based weapons detection, that's a trigger again to our system. We're going to adapt to the situation. We're going to then reach out to maybe law enforcement, let them know what's going on and send them information specifically through E911 that says, here's our address, here's what's going on, and here's all the information that goes along with it. If they have the rights to do so, they can see the actual image of the location on a satellite map. They could see the alarms as they happen. They can access those cameras. We could still lock those doors down. We can update security. We can tell people within the building, don't go outside, to do overhead pages, text, emails, phone calls, things like that. We can even do things within the building itself. So if they get into the building now and they fire that weapon, we can do things like close those fire doors down, make it a little harder for that person to get further in the building, slow their timeline down, which is giving everybody more time to get away. We're doing this within seconds. Our activation takes literally 3 to 4 seconds to do, which means we are limiting that full 5-minute worth of time. We're giving that gift of time back to everybody that's in there. Slide. On our Gunshot technology, it's very, very unique. We are not an audio-based product. We're not listening for the sound of a bang. We're not looking for flashes of light. We're not doing things like that in order to verify what's going on with a gunshot. Our technology was designed from day one to be very simplistic, to be battery operated, and to be wireless. So it's near infrastructure free. It's a very simplistic system that simply is waiting for the energy produced by the gunshot to wake up our device on site, which is typically asleep. And once it wakes up, it then pays attention to the information from that, right? So it sees this burst of energy. If that energy is enough, it then looks for specific characteristics within the energy itself. If it sees what it wants to, it passes a piece of that waveform back to the back end system. Remember, there's no audio. We can't listen, we can't play back, we can't record anything. The system is mathematic based. So it's going to run mathematical equations over what it gets and make final determinations on whether or not this is a gunshot or not. At that point, it's 6 sigma accurate, 99.99997. And it tells you what, at that point, whether this is a gunshot or not. We also have the capability in our system to teach it. So if anything should ever get through, or we're concerned that something may be a problem, we can actually capture the signature from that, feed it into the system, and tell the system to ignore it. So the system actually has the capability to learn from that as well. So what we have is a battery operated, and this is an off-the-shelf lithium D-sized cell on most of our products for the indoor units. Outdoor units are also solar powered as well. So you're looking at a 5-year lifespan on the indoor products, 7 years or longer on the outdoor ones as well from a battery standpoint. They're either using our proprietary RF to do communications, or they're using cell-based. Typically outdoors, that's what you're going to see. We can also do ballistics on our system, tell you what type of weapon has been fired, rifle, handgun, or shotgun, and tell you how many shots were fired as well. Slide. So our products are pretty straightforward. We've taken a first product, which was an indoor only gunshot detection thing, and we've expanded it and made a lot of changes to it over the years. We took the indoor Talon product, that's our indoor one, and we've made 2 versions of that, a surface mount and a flush mount version of that product that covers 31,000 square feet. It's actually the biggest in the industry from a detection standpoint. It's a 200-foot round area of coverage per device. And now we have outdoor units as well, which is our Dragonfly units. The first one that you see on there is actually our standard Dragonfly, which covers 70,000 square feet, which is roughly a 300-foot bubble of area that it's covering. There's also an extreme version of the same one that goes out to 18 acres, which if you do the math on that is 785,000 square feet. It's absolutely tremendously large. And that's actually programmable from a 500-foot to 1,000-foot coverage on that product. When you get into these products, one of the things we've always been able to do is triangulation. But once you move into a product like the Extreme, we can do things like trajectory. So we can tell you the actual path of travel of an actual bullet or projectile. On top of that, we created a mobile-based product called the Transit Fly that's based to go into buses, trains, taxis, anything you want to. That'll tell you if the vehicle has been in an accident, if there's a gunshot, and has a panic button on it. And there's a body-worn version as well, both an indoor and outdoor version. Those units are typically cell-based, or the indoor one is actually RF-based. That'll do man down, as well as gunshot detection, and has a button on it also for emergency. Slide. Just to give you a representation look of the distances of the differences of the coverage on those units. That indoor Talon unit is the one on the right, which gives you a 200-foot circular area of coverage. The outdoor standard Dragonfly does 300, and then you go out to 1,000 feet with that Dragonfly Extreme. Next. Just an example of trajectory. Again, 3 units or more to do triangulation or trajectory, and that can actually give you the path of travel from start to end point. Next. Integrations into our system are pretty straightforward. If you could just click on that for me, Kris. These will give you the basically the capability to tie in outside sources. So Scylla is a great example of this. They snap into our system and they give us a lot of AI-based inputs to our system. These all become just standard inputs. This is a very old one, not Scylla, by the way, but it gives you a great idea of what we're talking about. So now instead of a gunshot detection or a panic button being pressed or an app on a phone, we have the ability now to trigger off of other things. License plate recognition is a great one. Facial recognition is an awesome one. Smoke, fire, theft, fighting, brawling, and of course, viewable weapons, right? Guns, knives, things like that. Basically, once you make that connection into us, you now have the capability to do lots of things over your standard camera, which I'm going to let Kris get into in a minute. But it's a great way to enhance what's going on. Remember, what we're trying to do is deliver all the information we need to everybody needs it as quickly as possible. We're trying to slow down the bad stuff that's actually going on, and we're providing the tools to the people who need them so they can do something about the situation, get there quicker, and give that gift of time back, right? Bring help to the people who need it. Watch what's going on site. Don't forget, we have live camera views and everything else over a standard interface, right? It's just a web-based interface, which means everybody who needs to be looking at what's going on live camera feeds and everything else can do so. On top of that, we add a lot of other sensors, so you have no excuse not to put the system in place. You could do vape sensors, smoke sensors, there are emergency pull stations, duress buttons. These are all, of course, our wireless proprietary RF stuff. There's an app for a phone that allows you to do both active shooter, fire, medical, or other emergencies, and has safe mode. So that's actually tied to a person, and they can mark themselves as either in trouble or safe. And we actually then pinpoint them on a map where they're located based on their phone's location. And you can actually download that information and print it out in a report format. So you can know everybody who's safe or if they're in trouble or where they're located. Next. And I'll just pass this over to Kris.
All right. Well, thanks, Scott. So one of the purposes of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to do, prevent active shootings, whether it's in real time, early prevention, limited, identify that in real time as close as we can. So what Scylla does as far as that is we try to identify that weapon at first sight. So we are, the simplest thing, Scylla is a neural-based AI where we are a plug-in to an organization's existing system. And the AI is designed to replace what humans don't do very well, and that's watch your video cameras. And it can watch for objects, actions, anomalies, behaviors. And so we've trained the AI. One of the things, not limited to, by the way, but one of the very important things that we're talking about here is weapon detection. So Scylla will use an organization's existing cameras and turn it into an eye for our server-based brain that is a plug-in to their existing camera system that's quietly sitting there recording. So one of the things that make us stand out is we're not just a rules-based pixelation analytic. where if the pixels line up in the form of a stick man and holding what the pixels line up in the form of a gun, then rules-based, that must be a man with a weapon. Well, the term AI is thrown around so loose out there that people that are doing just rules-based analytics with a very high degree of false positives end up using the term AI when it's really not even a neural network. They get so many false positives that it ends up becoming noise to the operators, or operator fatigue, or or worse, they just start ignoring them or just turn them off. But with Scylla, we look at a person that we identify humans all the way down to body parts, and identify people just like a human would watching that video camera. So, different things that make us stand out. We work with moving backgrounds. So body cams, dash cams, drones, pan tilt zooms. It makes no difference to us what we are, essentially the camera is our eye. And so the better the camera, the better the result. So depending on what the environment is, you have the appropriate camera that can, that's recording already. Usually the cameras are right sized for the location anyway. If you have a 1080 HD camera, it's usually close up detection for the recording. The higher megapixel, you can reach out a further distance. If you go with a 4K camera, you can reach out a small handgun at say 50 yards. So different things that Scylla can do. Sometimes a video is worth 1,000 words. So I'll just give you a quick example of what Scylla is doing. And this is detecting from a moving background from a drone. So imagine a human trying to watch a video wall. It's impossible to see the person in this view. He just blends in. But in this case, Scylla not only sees the person in that view, but we've detected the weapon in his hand from 50 yards away from a moving drone. And when you zoom in to see why we made that detection, here's what the AI can see. So the purpose of this call, this webinar, is to show you how complementing technologies, Active Shooter Prevention Project has gone out and found best in breed technologies in multiple different areas. And as far as detecting gunshots, there's two different ways to do this. You can have the acoustic, where the energy and the pressure, you detect that gunshot in real time in places where you don't have camera coverage, or you have the visual, because all active shootings, just by logic, they start outdoors and move inside, right? Somebody either walks to your parking lot, gets out of their vehicle, exposes their weapon. They walk across your parking lot to the front door, expose their weapon. And if we can get them at first sight, hopefully we don't have to wait for first shot. But if we don't have camera coverage in an area and a shot takes place, then the shot takes, we hear the shot, can give the coordinates to Scylla. Scylla can take a PTZ camera and zoom in, or even dispatch a drone to go to those coordinates and investigate that, the source of that gunshot. So it's almost like a chocolate and peanut butter to make a whole new comprehensive it makes that peanut butter cup, right? So, it's, if somebody wants that complete coverage, you're going to want to have both the gunshot detection as well as the visible weapon detection. Glenn, Scott, you guys have any input on that or comments?
I'll just say in general, absolutely right on point, Kris. It is that holistic approach where everything, chocolate and peanut butter, hand in glove, it all works together, and it is basically assembling that to bring you all those different levels of security. So that's one of the reasons we're here to talk about this today, and how important this integration is.
So at Scylla, we are the experts in computer vision, right? That is our discipline. That is, our neural network can watch for those objects, actions, anomalies, behaviors. EAGL, their discipline is detecting that gunshot and managing that crisis while it's in action in real time. So you put those two solutions together, and it gives a pretty powerful solution as far as that early or pre-detection of that active shooting incident that's actually in process.
It all comes down to saving that time.
It
Save
really
time,
is.
save lives.
Every second is precious.
Yep.
The other difference is, when you're talking about different detections, Scylla is, privacy with the term AI always comes up. So Scylla works in a zero trust environment. Air gap solutions, we do not require internet for our solution to work. We do not require that our solutions be uploaded to the internet and then sent to a, third-party monitoring center where those false positives are, visually verified. But, when you're doing that, you are giving up, your privacy. There is the FERPA Act, which, you're sending like in a K-12, you're sending your children's images to a third-party monitoring center with, who knows who is monitoring those or where it's happening. You lose control of those images at that point. But in Scylla's case, we work in that closed air gap system. Nothing has to leave, for example, a K-12 or a school, or, nothing has to leave their network, right? It's in a closed air gapped solution. We do not need that internet to, identify those threats. And if they are going to do the monitoring, they want that visual verification. If that organization has a security operations center, they can all be fed right back into that security operations center, and they can visually verify it themselves with their own staff and their own security team. Nothing has to leave to an external third-party service. But we give those customers that choice about what to do with those detections. And when we're talking about false positives, one thing we can guarantee with analytics, you will get false positives from time to time, but that is actually a positive thing, because then the system is actively working. It's not like when you get in your car and you crush your fingers that your airbag is going to deploy, right? You can't really test that. But with Scylla and the analytics, you ever wonder if it's actually working? You just walk out in front of a camera, you pull out your test gun, it either picks it up or it doesn't. You never have to wonder, is the analytic working? Realistically, we don't just do it on is a gun. We also measure the probability of violence. So if we see a holstered weapon, for example, you have a resource officer, you have a police officer, armed security, we're not going to trigger an alert every time we see a holstered weapon. The AI is smart enough to know that weapon is holstered, so we're not going to trigger that alert until somebody's hand touches it. The second that officer's hand, or anybody's hand for that matter, touches that weapon, that's when Scylla gets excited. We immediately start triggering those alerts. We send it, because the probability of violence is going up, and then that human does take action at that point. We also, we're not going to send an alert every time we see a walking cane or an umbrella, for example. But you can never completely give up the fact, if you can't ignore those types of devices as well, because I could take a rifle, disguise it as a walking cane, and actually hide that and use that as a weapon too. But we don't want to trigger that alert every time we see that walking cane. So what Scylla does is we will also take into consideration the pose or the posture or the aggressive shooting stance. If we see if the AI is watching that camera view and they see somebody take their walking cane up and hold it in that prone shooting pose, the AI is going to look at that and analyze that scene just like a human would. We're going to say, well, number one, I know it's not a rifle and I know it's not a shotgun, but that's a threatening shooting posture. So the AI is going to look at that, analyze that scene, and go, you know what, that's pretty aggressive. That's a dangerous position. We're going to send that to the human at this point for that visual verification and let them ultimately make the decision about whether to take action or ignore it. So that is, the AI does, and then if it does come back and it says, oh, well, that's a student in the band room playing a musical instrument. Well, then the AI uses machine learning, both supervised and unsupervised, to use that decision-making process, that it will get smarter and smarter over time. So we will soon learn that what is normal in the band room with students playing musical instruments is not normal, say, in a parking lot. So the AI does get more and more accurate with time. And you put that in cooperation with the acoustic, you put that in cooperation with everything that the Active Shooter Prevention Project has vetted and looked at I don't even know how many different solutions you guys vet to find those best in breed technologies. But Scylla has been vetted by multiple third-party independent verifications, independent testing, separate from us. Multiple police forces, large municipality police forces have tested us against every other visual gun detection analytic on the planet. And they literally stopped testing everybody else 2 months into it because there were so many false positives, or even worse, a false negative, just a complete miss. Because when you're trying to use those rules-based pixelation rules, there's always something that somebody didn't anticipate when they were programming that. Like if somebody's all of a sudden crawling on the ground, a lot of the rules-based analytics using pixel-based will just flat out miss that, because that doesn't meet the criteria of somebody, walking with a gun, with a long gun, standing there and walking out, posing it. That's easy. It's some of the tougher things, the tougher detections that are not really, anticipated, that really give people the fits. And then when they try to tighten those analytics down to reduce the false positives, you get that worse. You get the false negative and a complete miss, and we cannot have a miss. So if you're looking for accuracy, you're looking for, the visual weapon detection, you're looking for the acoustic gunshot detection, know that these solutions have been vetted by the Active Shooter Prevention Project, who is just out, their number one goal is to stop shootings. So I don't know if, do you guys have anything else you'd like to bring up?
I would just say that you look at it from the aspect of how much intelligence information you can provide to law enforcement, and the fact that here we've identified a weapon. It has not been used yet, but we've identified that a weapon is coming towards the building in a parking lot. That's information can be provided immediately to law enforcement. Two, if there has been a gun fired, the amount of specific intelligence you can provide to responding officers about exact location, number of shots, type of weapon, and everything like that is just above and beyond anything else that we've seen out there. And there's a whole lot of information that you can provide the police, but when you can get it down to really what's intelligence and information that they can specifically act to, that's where you really get the biggest, if you will, pardon the pun, bang for the buck. But that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's the information we need to get out to responding law enforcement to support everybody.
Yeah, the bottom line with any of this stuff is combining all these things together makes a giant difference on who can get there, when they could get there, who knows what's going on so they can get out of the way. All that information is important, and all these things working together make a difference. Each of these pieces alone make a difference, but when you combine them together, it's just magnified over and over and over again. I think that's an important piece to kind of keep in mind. So I believe at this point, we're probably opening up for questions.
If we have any questions at the moment. If not, we can give you contact information where you can reach out to find out more information on the Active Shooter Prevention Project, on EAGL Technology, or Scylla. As we mentioned, the technologies are integrated, they're fully functional, they're, for that complete coverage, for that total overhead, that total comprehensive security platform. When you want to know if there's a weapon on your property, if you want to know if if that trigger's been pulled, these are the solutions they're going to tell you. And where every second is precious, then we do got a question. Do we have a comparison of Scylla with Zero Eyes? Sure, I can give you the biggest differentiator is we do not require any of our we do not require our customers to use us as a monitoring center. In fact, we are not a monitoring center. We have monitoring centers around the globe who use our analytics because of the accuracy. Literally, we work in that zero trust environment. We do not require internet or cloud. That's one of the things that Zero Eyes does require is internet, because those images have to leave that organization, go to the go through the cloud and go to that third-party monitoring center. And one other thing that I do understand, or I've been told, is that they will not allow a organization to field their own analytics and their own alerts because they are more monitoring center than they are technology. So that is one thing is, you don't want that, the false positives, because no matter who it is, no monitoring center is going to accept the type of noise and the constant false positives of a very, inaccurate analytic or a substandard technology. Even if somebody is fielding those alerts themselves and they promise their customers 0 false positives because they're using their people to, field and filter those alerts, operator fatigue. I'm sorry, but when you have, I don't care who you are, but if you're watching screens and you're constantly getting false positives, you soon get numb to that. So, with Scylla, when you get an alert with Scylla, you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, that is a gun, or, you completely understand why that detection was given. You're not going to get things like a fire extinguisher or a tree or anything like that, or even cell phones. You're not going to get that inundated by the cell phones. So the difference is the accuracy, the forced requirement to use their monitoring center. We allow that organization to use their own internal security team to field those alerts, or the monitoring center of their choice. Another question. Do we have a recommendation for a metal detector partner company that we can work with EAGL and Skyla? Yes, we do. We do have a, as far as the total coverage, there's essentially 3 different ways that you can identify weapons. You have the gunshot detection covered by EAGL. You have the visual, which is covered by Scylla. And then for metal detections, we've partnered with CEIA. And as far as the metal detections. So if you want even the full coverage, then that is a partner that we have there. And we can put you in touch with contacts there as well.
And Kris, if I may, EAGL's actually an open platform, so you can use anybody you want to, as long as they're standard API based and open. We are more than willing to work with them and connect them to us.
We also have another question. Can we discuss concerns regarding camera visibility in low light conditions? So yes, again, the camera is our eye. So we are dependent on the quality of the camera. If that camera is just, does not have infrared, then of course, in pitch black, you're not going to see anything. Like your eye would not see anything. But you add infrared to that, you add low light conditions, starlight, then absolutely we can detect in those low light dark situations. But again, it does have to have some form of lighting on the situation. And again, we always encourage people to test. So if there's ever a question about whether we're going to accurately detect in a certain lighting condition, we encourage people test and test often. And we send out our best practices for our optimal performance for proper lighting conditions, camera angles, for that best practice to get the optimal performance. And we're pretty forgiving as far as, plus or minus off of those baseline settings. But that's where we tell you to test and test often. And then there is no question about what kind of performance you're going to get. So I don't see any other questions at the moment. So if there's no more questions, there are a couple of more. Can you speak to triangulation? So maybe Scott will let you speak to that.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, absolutely. Triangulation is actually a little simpler from our standpoint than it is from others. We don't actually use timing. We use the energy that we detect to determine triangulation so from our standpoint, it's 3 devices or more to cover an area to do triangulation. Obviously, it's triangulation, that means 3. You could do it with 2, but the accuracy obviously is much less. Depending on the product that you use, whether, indoor doesn't actually make a ton of sense to do because the spaces are so small, but indoor, outdoor, or anything else, you can get a pretty big distance on it. Our distance on ours is set down to 6 feet for triangulation, so it's extremely accurate. And of course, don't forget you have trajectory as well as an option. So instead of doing triangulation, you can actually give the path of travel instead. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you looking to see if your projectile is aiming at a specific location, like critical incident, critical infrastructure and things like that? Or is it more important just to know that a gunshot has gone off in an area, or specifically where in the area it went off?
Thank you. And we have another question. Do we self-direct or through the channel? I can speak for Scylla, and I think I can speak for EAGL as well. We are both channel oriented. Channel is our go-to-market strategies.
Correct.
Another question. How does Scylla reconcile concerns of 3D printed firearms that do not traditionally look like a gun? So the methodology behind Scylla, because we are so accurate in detecting, a gun, you can line up weapons and we can tell you the difference between a rifle and a shotgun. But if there is a weapon that we've never seen before, because there's always new things being, invented and created, like a 3D printed firearm, excuse me, that's where we take into consideration the probability of violence and the aggression and the pose. So I can take a cell phone, for example, and I can buy a cell phone that is a single shot weapon, right? And I can turn that cell phone into a gun. So we can't ignore every time, a cell phone is a weapon, but we don't want to give, an alert or a false positive every time somebody's making a phone call or holding their phone. But if you take your cell phone and you hold it in a shooting, threatening position or posture, then Skyla's going to look at that just like we would that walking cane, that rifle disguised as a walking cane. And if we have a gun disguised as a cell phone, we're going to say, look, I know it's not a handgun. In fact, it looks like a cell phone, but that is not the way that people hold their cell phone, right? In a shooting aggressive pose. So Scylla will ultimately, after we see that and evaluate it, trigger that alert based on that cell phone or the pose or the posture or the aggressive stance of it. And that's how we would treat any 3D printed firearm that we've never seen before. But if you take a 3D printed firearm and it looks exactly like a handgun, we're going to trigger it. Oh, there's one more. Assuming external sounds or alarms can be activated for a threat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of what we can do. We can send out text, emails, voice-based phone calls, E911. We can control relays outbound. We can push information into digital signage, make bells ring, make lights go off, do anything you want to do. It's a complete automation platform.
Well, very good. If there's no more questions pop up, we can wrap this up. And again, appreciate everybody's time. Feel free to reach out. We got one more. How does Active Shooter Prevention Project help with trainings and implementation of the technology?
Well, that's a great question too, because really, as we talked about, it's this holistic approach, right? We have this wonderfully innovative technology that we're actually working together in these close partnerships, but it's also we have to address the human aspect of this. How do we talk to people about being prepared for something that they might encounter, some sort of a critical incident? So the Active Shooter Prevention Project, and within our community of experts, we do all sorts of from facility security assessments to training for critical incidents. We do special events. We do just a whole spectrum of everything. We refer that human aspect to how do we maximize the benefits of technology that is supporting us. So we do a lot of those other things to wrap around and bring that full holistic response together. So great question.
And one thing I would like to add again, because it is really important, is that Scylla is in full compliance with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, otherwise known as FERPA. There is from for any time students' images are being sent to third-party monitoring centers, it's only a matter of time until that is, that process is challenged by some attorney who, or some student who is concerned about, parent who's concerned about the privacy of their student's image being sent to God knows where, and God knows who's looking at it. So one thing to know, we are in 100% in compliance with that. Other questions? What does Active Shooter Prevention Project think of multiple vendors using lobbying to lock out schools from purchasing from other vendors?
And I'll say, just address it this way: is, we're looking for the proper solutions that protect everybody out there. So that's really what we're focused on. We're focused on the leading edge of technology and partnerships in addressing things. We're looking at it from that aspect rather than getting into the details there. But I think that's really that we're looking to see who has the best solutions, who has the right approach, who can work together to protect everybody. And that's really our focus.
Yeah, so that really has been misleading. And for lockouts to be put in towards public tenders or RFPs that are put out, you're literally denying the students the best in breed technology to put in any lockout. You should be willing, as any technology, to go head to head, side by side, for a real-time evaluation or comparison. And if you're scared to do that, that should be a warning sign for anybody that's evaluating that technology or considering that technology. We're willing to go head to head, side to side, or by any technology on the planet, and we've never lost a side by side accuracy test. I have another question. Are there leasing mobile setup options for temporary events? Scott,
Yeah, I can answer that. So yeah, absolutely. And we're because we're a mobile platform like that, battery operated, solar charged, wireless, typically cell based for the outdoor stuff, especially. It makes it very simple for us to install where we're needed, when we're needed, and then you can take us down and move us around as needed. We had recently done an extremely large sports gathering that we're not really, I can't get too deep into, around a stadium, and actually put our product in place. We had 24 units up and running, which we installed in less than a day, had it up and running throughout the whole event, and had no false alarm issues whatsoever, even with jets flying over and bands playing and people screaming and yelling and everything else. And we're able to then take it down right afterwards in no time at all and relocate it anywhere we need to do so. So you could do that on a lease basis if you want to. And of course, the mobile setup options for us are very, very simplistic. And you could still do things like triangulation, trajectory, and all those things that you'd want to do for that at the same time.
and from Skyla's perspective, absolutely, we could do that. When I mentioned that we work on-premise situations in a zero trust environment, we also work in the cloud, but we do not require the cloud. But for those organizations that have an event like a fair, sporting event, concert, anything that is, a short term, we can turn on very powerful cloud servers. We can analyze in the cloud for, that 3-day event, that 10-day event, and then turn off those servers at the end of that event. So absolutely, we can support anything on a temporary basis without having the extensive cost of on-premise servers. Very quick and easy to set up our cloud servers. Another question came in. How does EAGL compare with OmniAlert?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question, because OmniAlert can connect to us like Scylla does. They're limited in what they can do. So they're doing visual weapons detection, and that's literally all they do. And they're okay with it. Typically third-party monitoring for them, because of the issues that we see with that type of AI. They don't really do much more than that. However, EAGL is not in that place. What we do is we take a snap in. So Scylla is a great example of that, how they connect to us, and all their capabilities then become ways to trigger our automation platform. And that's really what we're doing. We're automating what's happening during an event, no matter what that event happens to be. It doesn't have to be an active shooter. It could be anything you want to automate, and could be simplistic or extremely complex. That's where our kind of key is for everything that we do. So OmniAlert is only giving you one little piece of it, and then they're sending out a text and an email and not doing a whole lot more on there, where we're trying to encompass absolutely everything. So text, email, voice calls, E911, locking doors down, doing anything else that we can do to affect the situation and then provide those tools like we said before.
And one question I can talk about how Scylla compares in that case too. Both Zero Eyes and OmniAlert are essentially one-trick ponies. They have one detection, right? And it's not even clear whether it's a true neural network or not. But because Scylla is a true neural network, we're not limited to a single detection. We're not limited to just gun detection. It's like telling a child, I can only teach you math. No, we can teach that child math, science, history, English, and 1,000 other languages. And that's because of our technology. It's literally a brain. We're not limited. So at the same time, we're watching for guns. We can watch for fights. We can watch for slip and falls. We can watch for aggression, bags left behind, and shoplifting, and LPR, license plate recognition. We can do, all kinds of different things. Like to say that Scylla is capable of, a facial rec company literally does the neural network a disservice. It's a brain with a perfect memory that has the capability of memorizing every vehicle tag or every face that it sees. So that in cooperation, you can solve your gun detection issue today. And in 6 months, you want to put in intruder detection, or you want to put in fight detection. You have one platform to manage that and use your cameras and get more mileage out of those. So one other question is EAGL or active shooter prevention project related to Zero Now? So Scott, I'll let you answer that one.
So we actually are pretty much open to work with anyone who is interested in doing something about active shooter and saving lives. So, I mean, we've talked to pretty much everybody in the past, but I don't believe there's a specific relation to them at this point. However, we're of course open to work with anyone.
Certainly from the ASPP standpoint, there are several of us that are members within the Zero Now community. I personally have spoken at a panel discussion regarding vulnerability assessments for schools. So we participate from that level. We don't have a specific ASPP Zero Now association aside from participating in that community.
Are there any other questions anybody would like to present? If not, well, one more. Is there a distribution-friendly product? So from Skyla's perspective, yes. I mean, that's how we go to market, the channel through distribution. We do not have the infrastructure to sell direct. So, distribution and the go-to-market channel or channel partner is our go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with EAGL as well. We are available through distribution.
Are there any other questions that anybody would like to pose? If not, we can wrap this up. And again, feel free to reach out to anybody listed on the screen. And appreciate everybody's time and interest.
And I just want to say, Kris and Scott, thank you very much for the collaboration. Thank you for the incredible innovation and everything here. And we deeply appreciate partnership with both of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you all. I hope everybody stays safe.